And John doesn't talk about the parents in the world. He goes to the source. He comes in a different way, different angle altogether. It's very interesting. So let's read John 1, 1 to 18. I'll give you a minute. I'll also go to Genesis 1 as we are doing this, but just a few scriptures. We don't have to read all of them, but start with this. It's interesting that he should use these terminologies, which is exactly there in Genesis 1:1. It's funny. But look at this. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. So look at the terminology. I want you to notice Word, and the term used, another term is about life. In him was life. So we saw this when we were talking about spirit, soul and body. We saw Genesis 2:7, that how God breathed the wind, the breath of God created the soul of man, the spirit, soul, and that's how man became a living soul. It says life came into him. So he's talking about this verse 4, in him was life, and the life was light of men, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. So now he's from inanimate terms, words, he is relating to people now. It's become persons. He's talking about persons in each one of these. It represents a person. Jesus. Without using the word Jesus, he said all this. But it makes sense. Now let's look at Genesis 1. It makes sense. I just want you to think about this. It doesn't say, just a theory at this point, it doesn't say explicitly that this is Jesus, but you can kind of read between the words when we read this in Genesis 1. Let's see this in 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said, see, in verse 1 it's talking about God. It's God the Father. This is my theory, okay? I'm not saying I'm creating a doctrine, but just think about it as we're reading John. And then in verse 2 it's talking about the Spirit of God. But there's no mention of Jesus anywhere, right? Verse 3, then God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. So what he did, it seems like he created the light, and with the light he made the first day, because after that it's going to be each day he created this, he created that. He's creating after that, one after the other. But let's look into verse 14 of Genesis 1. We know he created the other things. I'm just saving time. He created the sky, he created land, earth, he separated water from the earth. That's how he created dry land. And then in 14 he says, this is the fourth day. Then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let there be for signs and seasons, for days and years. So he's talking about another light here. He's talking about the sun and the moon. So then, if 14 is sun and the moon, so what was verse 3? He created light. Isn't it? And then he says, in verse 3 he says, let there be light, and there was light, and God saw the light, it was good, and God divided. And so now, if you keep that light in mind, and now when we look at John 1, that light he was talking about over there is Jesus. On the earth, Jesus was created first, and with him, because here when John, I'm going to repeat again, some of them again. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All this is about Jesus. All things were made through him. He was the first created being, and from him everything else was created. And without him, nothing was made that was made. Because he came out of God. That he also says that in another way. Verse 4, in him was life, and the life was the light of men, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. Now we're changing direction, talking about John. This man came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. This was the true light, which gives light to every man coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. This is being born again, isn't it? It's the Spirit is born by this. Verse 40, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. This is talking about the real birth of Jesus. This is the story of Christmas. And we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John bore witness of him and cried out, saying, this was he of whom I said, he who comes after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. And of his fullness we have all received the grace for grace. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten God, who is in the bosom of the Father. He has declared him. So we'll stop here. So you see the story of creation and how Jesus was there before, but now he's talking about Jesus in the flesh. Now this is the story. The gospel is the story of Jesus in the flesh. Okay? Yeah, now, so he is the light. So let's focus on the word light and what other things are mentioned about the light of the world in those terminologies. Jesus being the light of God and the Son of God. So the Greek word used is phos, as mentioned there in Genesis 1. We saw that. Now let's look at the prophecy of Jesus. The other are we using just this term light only from these two places? No, there's so many other mentioned. Let's read Matthew 4:16. You can read it if you get it before me.
The people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned.
He's quoting here the prophecy in Isaiah 9:1 and 2. It's there. He's quoting that. Another place we see something similar is Luke 2:32. Luke chapter 2, verse 32. Almost the same thing. A light to bring revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel. So the light is mentioned and referred to the Messiah, Jesus. This was prophecy. They're quoting prophecy about Jesus, these two places. And Jesus said it himself. Let's go back to John 8:12. This is Jesus saying. You remember Jesus says in many places about himself, I am the way, I am the door,
And the truth.
I am the way, the truth. He says so many of those I am what. He gives those in John 10, and he gives many of them. So here he used this word light there, and he says that chapter 8, verse 12. This is talking, if you see in the previous portion, it's about the woman they caught in adultery, and they said, is anyone here without sin? You start, and then he speaks to her, verse 10. When Jesus had raised himself up and saw no one but the woman, he said to her, woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you? She said, no one, Lord. And Jesus said to her, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. And then verse 12, then at that point he says, then Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. So he's talking about eternal life, that the spirit birth. If you have me, you will have that life which is spirit coming alive. And that will go on forever. So he quoted it. Now, he said, even though he said it here, and in Luke he says in different portions, we have in Matthew, in the Sermon on the Mount, he gives this in a different way. Look at Matthew 5, 14, 15, and 16. In 13 he says, you are the salt of the earth. And then in 14 he says, can someone read that? 14, 15, and 16 for me?
You are the light of the world.
Mm-hmm.
A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven.
So if Jesus said, I am the light, and then he says, you are the light. So when we compare ourselves all the time with Jesus, we say the only person we can compare is Jesus, and people think we are elevating ourselves to God, and this makes it clear, isn't it? That Jesus said that. He said that. Come up to my level. This is what I want you to do. I want you to remember, you are the light of the world. And then he even says, don't hide it. You have to shine that light. It's not just for keeping within you. Purpose of the light is to shine, to quell darkness. Light has a purpose. It has to shine. It has to be on top. So he made it very clear. Matthew 6, but at the same time, okay, that's the light, but it's like a disclaimer. Okay, at the same time, watch out for this. Matthew 6, 22 and 23. The lamp of the body is the eye. So he's making comparison of the light. So how for the body, the members of the body, the light is the eye is the one which brings everything inside. So how the lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? So he's talking about why we talk about people of darkness, why the world is in darkness. If you don't have eternal life, if you're not born again, any man who's not born again has darkness. Because the lack of light automatically becomes darkness. Even if they are outwardly good in every way, but there is something which is missing. So those who have light, that's where we differ. When we talk about the difference between the redeemed man and the unredeemed man. In the spirit realm, we are different. There's something which is special about having that light. So just watch out for that. If there is light is lacking, that automatically that means it's darkness. John 12, let's read a few passages. 12, 35 and 36. So much we were able to see even just from the Gospels. Because we did so much of the epistles, focusing this time on what Jesus said. All red letters, right? 35. He's specifically talking to them, and he says to the disciples, and he says, then Jesus said to them, a little while longer the light is with you.